Hello and welcome to another very special episode of Kakuchopurei's Talk Cock Sing Song TCSS. I'm your co-host, Mr. Toffee. Joining me is good old Kenn and a special guest here. We've got a really special guest here. So, we got here right now the youth leader, Pakatan Harapan and Setiawangsa MP, Nik Nazmi. So, how are you doing, Nik?
Good, thank you.
Good thing I did not flop that up, otherwise it's gonna be a bit. You're gonna hopefully not blacklist this, hopefully. Alright, cool. So Ken and I, we're actually gonna be talking to you about a lot of esports stuff because I believe you have some sort of like initiative and a lot of like knowledge and what you want. You kind of want to push this forward in Malaysia. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of our agenda.
Alright, cool. So I've got a few questions I'm gonna pull up here, and we're gonna keep it like in an orderly kind of fashion. So, but it's still gonna be a very casual kind of way of doing things. So if you want to just let loose, and I mean, it's okay if you let slip a bit of profanity. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Alright. So now, first question: what are your thoughts on esports in general? I mean, how do you get started in this? Like, we want to know more about you. Like, all of us, the fans, the Kakuchopurei readers, Ken and I want to actually know more about what's going on your side. Like, how you got into this?
Well, I'm not really, I wouldn't say I'm very much into esports per se. I play some games on my own. From the days of Warcraft, the old Warcraft and Counter-Strike and FIFA. And all sorts of games, Rise of Nations and all that. But I've seen how the whole sports have developed since then, and I think it's something that we really should support because we have a lot of potential, Malaysia, to do big in this.
All right, that's awesome. Like, when you talk about like potential, like what kind of potential do you see? I mean, what are the more recent events that you've actually checked out personally on your side? Because I remember there was some Malaysian Cyber Games a while back, right? And then I haven't been visiting Malaysia as often as I should because, Singapore work and all that. But, I mean, there's also like the FV Cup as well that happened a few weeks ago. I think it was last month per se. So, I mean, from all the experiences you've seen, like, which ones have you actually personally seen on your side?
I haven't seen that many, to be honest. I mean, I know that there's a few vibrant competitions that's been going on, and we've had Malaysians who have succeeded in esports, even at the international level or part of an international team. But the problem in Malaysia is that the scene is not consolidated. It's very fragmented, and I think that is where something where we can really improve so that we can compete with the big boys.
Okay. When you mean big boys, you're talking like guys like ESL or even a DreamHack. DreamHack would be like a really good example where big communities, Sweden, Yokomping, and all that. Yeah, those are pretty big. So, your opinions now, if the current development, like what were the areas you think they could actually improve on? I mean, do you have any specific details or know-how? I mean, from your experiences per se?
I'm not sure about how develop our code of conduct for players, parents, organizers. I mean, I think that is something we have to look into because as we are all aware, a lot of participants in esports are very young, so there are legal issues that we need to deal with. And as you mentioned, countries like Sweden, they have set a benchmark in terms of how esports can work. And I think we really should, I think another push is, I know that we have some female players, but I think we should do more to encourage them as well so that we get more diversity in the scene. I mentioned about the big boys and maybe I shouldn't say that, but, we don't want it to be just an all boys club. We also want people to see that the whole esports arena is something that is viable. It's not a problem or a social problem, but something that we can pursue as part of the sports, just like any other sports.
Okay, I have something to ask here. Like, for us, we are as players, as common fans, right? But from where you are standing, when you look at the situation coming into, I mean, you're part of the new government in Malaysia, and then of course you are looking at what was before you And where do you think could be improved on? And is there any good stuff that was brought over to the current position? And where do you think are the main areas you want to focus first?
Well, I think the previous administration, they did recognize esports as one of the avenues for sports. And I think we should look into it in a bigger manner because its impact is one directly as esports per se. And I think just as in any other sports, when you have people pursuing esports, you can overcome other social problems and other problems that you always link it with the youth. And it will also have other impact on our creative industries. So I think that we need to do more, and we need to consolidate, and we can't just for example have people have a very, or if it's an esports infrastructure, it's just about cyber cafe. It needs to be more than that, to have proper training areas for places for players to train, and a whole system in place. So I think that's what we need to look at, and obviously our internet speed, that is also something that is very crucial. Without a good backbone, we can't have we can't do really well in esports.
Obviously, it's still a very young government, right? Everything is still put in place. Everyone's still trying to, the seat is not even warm yet. But so where do you think the situation is right now? I mean, the youth side of things, the sports side of things, as well as the infrastructure.
Well, we have a youth and sports ministry under YB Said Sadiq, and I think his ministry will definitely play an important role, just as under the previous administration it was under the youth and sports ministry. So I think since we as Pakatan Harapan Youth, we mentioned building esports as an important industry for the country, especially for young Malaysians. So I believe that the ministry must take the lead to play a role, and I think regulation is very important, and but we can't over-regulate because that might stifle creativity and dynamism. But there has to be some base standard that is met for all the players.
The new Ministry of Youth and Sports, how do you think they could help out improve the esports scenes? Maybe give out, cherry pick a couple of examples here and there, like off the top of your head, if that's cool.
I think one of the most important things is for the industry to grow is to have a better sponsorship, and so you as well as to be able to stream it to a wider audience. Yes, I mean we have, it's esports is being broadcasted on Astro, but it is still quite limited, and it's still not comprehensive enough, and you just cover a few games, maybe just the big three. So we hope that it can be broader, because I think as I'm sure you know the scene is much more diverse than that, and we want to show to the audience that there's a lot more that esports can offer than what you've already seen. So I think with that, and then with more sponsorship coming in, then the industry can be sustainable.
I've actually kind of prefer Malaysia's growth of esports as of late. I mean, if you look at the fighting game community side, especially for the FV Cup side, or even the Infinity Carnage and those guys with the hitboxes, cyber cafes, they actually are small, but they're very dedicated. Like you've got Tekken 7, Street Fighter 5, and a bunch of other fighting games, Blaze Blue, Cross Tag, Dragon Ball FighterZ. They're really trying their best to grow it despite the small size. Now compare that to Singapore, where last time it was actually kind of like you got Dota 2 LOL, but the problem is, unlike Malaysia, at least from what I've seen so far, Singapore is kind of lacking that loyalty. Like, remember when there was this game called Overwatch that came out? I think Kenn and I obviously know what Overwatch is, but now when Overwatch came out in 2016, Singapore was on it like flies to honey or bees to honey, but it petered out to the point where when I check out the forums, it kind of died out per se. I don't see this in for Malaysia at the very least, at least for Dota 2 or the latest game like Mobile Legends Bang Bang or so. Maybe, I mean, is that something you see? Like, that's something that Malaysia has from a loyalty standpoint? Is that something you've seen in your experience?
Well, I think as always, our scene is much more organic. It's much more authentic, and Singapore can be the other end of the spectrum. I think we cannot, in our effort to have a better infrastructure, a better ecosystem for esports in place, we shouldn't lose out on, I agree, on the authenticity that we built all this while, and that is something that we should try as much to preserve. We don't want to go to that extreme where we lose out, and you just see this and lose the loyalty that we have.
Okay, fair enough. Now, there are quite a number of misconceptions about esports that people have come across. Now, when you're talking to your colleagues and your members of parliament or anyone else within your line of work, what do you think are the most common misconceptions about esports that they keep telling you, or you keep hearing from other people, and how do you correct them per se?
Well, one of the first things is they didn't know that you can make money from this. That's one thing. Secondly is that they say, okay, you can make money from this, but at least in physical sports you exercise, but then you have to explain to them that esports is a form of mental exercise. You're exercising your mind, you're exercising your brains, and that is still something that is very useful for society. So I think we need to, and they just have to accept it. As much as we played our galah panjangs, we played our bottle caps when we were younger.
Oh, I remember that.
And we hope that those games will be preserved for our children. But for the newer generation of children, for our generation, we grew up on computer games, and this is just as normal to us, and it's something that we should preserve as well.
Funny you mentioned preservation, because if I recall, it was both the Philippines and Malaysia who started Dota before the Europeans started taking over from Russia and whatnot. So, I mean, in a way, that could be something that could be preserved. The older Dota, not Dota 2 right now. Like, back then when it was a mod where it was pretty expensive for a lot of us to actually pay for these things, where you gotta buy one game, have a mod that's free, and go from there. So that culture is something that's worth preserving. Wouldn't you agree, per se?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, interesting you mentioned about the younger generation, the kids and everything. So obviously, unlike traditional sports where the peak period for an athlete for football, for example, is 26 to 29. That's when they have physical presence. But for esports, normally it's between 18 to 22, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously the most important bit there to get younger children to be not just only invested in esports, but also convincing their parents that this is an okay step, because a lot of parents are still very old school. So do you have anything in plan to get over that hump?
Well, I think we need to educate. I agree, educate both the parents, the kids about this, and those who are involved in the whole scene. I mean, as I said, we need to have more protection. I agree for the kids. They tend to be very young. Sometimes even before they can legally sign for contracts. I mean, they're already doing well in esports, and so we need to convince the parents that there are safeguards, that okay, if they want to do something else later, then since people tend to peak early in esports, why don't they give these games a try and spend full time for a few years and see how it goes? So I mean, the whole job market in the world is changing anyway. Even if you go to university, it doesn't mean that you have a job right now. So I think we need to educate parents and say that the world has changed, and we need to adapt the kids to that changing world, and esports is part of that changing landscape.
So would you say it's safe to start assuring kids? I mean, just say a 13-year-old, just say watching this right now, would you agree if you can say, you know what, if you have the interest, you have the dedication, there is room for you to be a professional esports athlete in Malaysia in the next 3-4 years? Is it fair to say that?
It's fair, and I mean, just as I would say to anyone who's interested in acting, anyone who's interested in singing or whatever, that you should pursue your dreams and explore that, and while I agree that we need to have those safeguards in place so that there's no exploitation and the rights of the players are protected.
Funny you mentioned education a while back, because Singapore right now has been handling, at least from the SCOGA and the government and other esports body side, that they actually have launched an esports academy center where basically anyone who plays or streams or shoutcasts, they get certification for this plus game design as well when they graduate and work their asses off. And they even have like the pro players and the teachers trying to actually get certification so they are eligible or they have authenticity to actually teach younger people and younger generation. So what are your thoughts about the Esports Academy or this kind of structure? Do you think it's something that's viable that can be done in Malaysia or any other country, or do you think that this is just another scheme
like
of
a fad?
sorts? Like a fad or a scheme?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to look at it carefully. I mean, I think we were talking about how what has happened in Singapore has sort of stifled the spontaneity and the authenticity of the scene. I mean, I'm not saying that it's totally bad, but I'm saying that we should, look at it carefully. And Singapore is a very small country.
Yes.
I mean, I hate to say that, but that's a reality, and it's easy for them to do in their context, whereas in Malaysia it's a bit different. Gamers are not just in KL. Gamers are across Malaysia, sometimes in very small towns and all that. So I think we need to look at about how we can implement it in our market and without losing, as you mentioned just now, the strengths that we have already in the Malaysian market.
Okay. I think those are the only questions I got so far. Ken, you got anything you want to add before? Hello, Ken? Yeah, Ken. Hey, you were zoning out there.
Okay. So I think my question, closure would be, what would be your final, assurance towards all of the readers right now? Actually, anyone who's watching this, where can they see the esports scene in Malaysia be in maybe in 6 months, in 1 year or 2 years? Because a lot of people want to get into esports, but they don't know how. So do you have anything, you're cooking something in the background to actually make it more accessible, not just for someone who's in KL, but actually anyone outside of KL even?
Well, to be honest, I think I can't speak on behalf of the ministry. You have to ask the ministry or the minister himself. But as a whole, I think we haven't really gone into detail about esports as Pakatan Harapan, the new administration. But it was mentioned in our manifesto, and I think that we will take the opportunity of this new administration to learn from the shortcomings of the past, and also what we did right in the past, and to see how we can chart a new path in New Malaysia that can really work for esports, because I think this is the opportunity for many things that did not succeed in the past to truly flourish.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, cool. I believe that is all that we have, all the questions we got for you, Nik. Thanks again, and maybe you want to say some final words before we wrap up the podcast?
All right. I enjoyed being on the show. I mean, I'm still learning a lot about esports. I think that a lot of compared to the listeners out there, and I hope being part of the new administration, I can play a role to champion esports in New Malaysia.
All right, awesome. Thanks a lot, Nik. Thanks again for joining me, Ken, to help out with the interview and everything.
Sure.
All right, and this is me, Mr. Toffee. Before we sign out, go check our website at kakuchopurei.com. That's KAKUCHOPUREI.com. Check us out on Facebook, check us out on the website. We've got a little Twitter thing going on, so check it out. Next time, I'll see you on the other side, everyone.